Okay, we're going to start out by being a little bit repetitive. Actually, more than a little bit. All through the initial portions of this site, you've heard me talk about the principle of correspondence. As above, so below, as below, so above. But I have to be, it's repetition with a purpose because it's extremely important and will open up a lot of information for you if used properly. Now, to give you an idea, we've talked about the creative process, both ourselves and the all, of that infinite being, but let's really investigate how it might take place. You know, I say might because I don't pretend that I know absolutely everything, but here's something that makes perfect sense to me. I want you to stop and think about what we did earlier with the I and me portion of you and creating a visualization. I want you to look at your mind's eye, and I want you to think that you're standing on the edge of a lake, and it is perfectly calm. And that portion of the lake represents your mind's eye. And all of a sudden you have a thought. And I want you to see what would happen. What would happen if you took and threw a pebble into that glass surface? It would splash and the ripples would move outward. Okay? I want you to think about sending a thought to your mind's eye in the same way. That from one point, that ripple moves outward and takes form in some way. It affects all the rest of the lake, and it has a series of consequences that go with it. But that action, whether it's that pebble or it's that thought, is continuous from one source. So everything that it does, everything that it causes to happen, happens in the same way, because it is generated from that one initial source. Okay? Now, this is why correspondence is so important. If you want to learn things, if you look at yourself and you say, this is how I create, because there is continuity. I don't care what level of reality you're at. There is continuity between all the levels. If something manifests in a certain way on one level, let's say physical, it manifests in the same way on all levels. Okay? There is complete continuity. Now, let's just take a very, very simple example. We know that everything that we are looking at is energy, and it is a combination of both positive and negative. We call it masculine and feminine in Hermetic philosophy, but really what it is that I and me, that directive and that receptive force. It is, for example, in the simplest atom, a combination of positive particles and negative particles, protons, electrons. The amount of electrons and protons is usually universal. In other words, they're the same. But it is the electron that determines what that particular molecule or that atom is. And again, it's that portion which is the receptive portion. If you look at the simplest thing in creation, which is male, female, again, it is the female through which all reproductive processes take place. The creation of the beings that are going to take my place and your place, that's how that takes place. So again, there is continuity. They are beginning to find out now in quantum physics that whole idea of the oneness that I've talked about with the infinite being, it's the same for them. They're beginning to find out that it's the truth for them too, that everything is connected. It started in 1964 with Bell's theorem. It's moved on to actual experiments by Alan Aspect in France in 1982. So that connection that we see on the infinite or the level of the all is the same down in the deepest physical levels. Now, you have to put that to use. I can't sit back and I can't say, Well, in this instance, it's this. Here's the continuity between this, then between this, and this portion and that portion. I want you to think about it, okay? I want you to sit back and discover it for yourself. And there's a very important reason why that it should be that way. You know, I think I mentioned my background is parochial, it's college. I mean, I was brought up where I listened, and I was told things and I was expected to accept them. But what happened when I started truly to investigate was that when I made discoveries, they were so much more meaningful to me. They had an impact on me that I really can't explain or put into words. All right, and part of that was the use of this principle of correspondence. You know, I can look at one thing and say, well, let me really investigate that. Let me take a look at it. Oh, that's how it works. Well, wait a minute. If it works that way, then this has to be true. And then you go and take a look at what you think has to be true, and you discover that it is. That's a very important aspect of spiritual development. You know, we've been told for years, and I guess this really is the difference when you're talking about true spiritual development. Been told for years, you know, you have to do this, and this, or you're going to suffer dire consequences. You're going to end up in that place after you pass from the physical that's going to be, you know, really terrible if you don't do it. And what I've always thought about is the person who does that for that reason. It's really a self-serving reason. It's really not something that makes them a better person. They are protecting themselves. Whereas if you look at something and you discover it and you say, oh, that's the way it should be. That's what I'm doing wrong. I should be doing the right things because they're the right things to do. That is growth. Growth does not follow by following a set of rules that promise either rewards or punishment. It comes from the inside. It comes from saying, I'm going to do the right thing. I have discovered deep down a truth that's resident in me, that's resident in not many other people, everyone. And I should be acting in a certain way, both for myself and towards them. And you know what? I'm going to do it. Correspondence can get you there. It's going to take some work, but it can get you there. You will hear me use the principles of correspondence again in these newer videos, I'm sure, because I'll want to point out something. But it's a key, again, that can open up a lot of information to you. I hope you follow what I'm going to say, what I'm saying, and I hope you will practice it. And we'll now move on to something else, which, as a matter of fact, is vibration. And everything vibrates, and boy, is that a controlling factor. Not just in our lives, but in everybody else's and reality in general.